welcome back. Today we're having clams and seafood ramyun. I added a little bit of watercress and bean sprouts. So grab your spoons, grab your forks, or grab your chopsticks and let's get started. Let's take the first bite of this. I'm so excited. Oh, I also added a little bit of glass noodles in this. So good. And then I have this seafood sauce down here. So I'm just gonna dip this. So good. Okay, so today I want to talk about the birth story for my youngest, since I did a birth story for my oldest. So that I wouldn't be leaving him out. I just want to tell about that experience. It was much better than with my daughter, but it was not uneventful. I mean, it was stressful, and a lot of things that we didn't plan for did happen. So with my first, I did mention that I had to have an emergency C-section. So when I got pregnant with my second, I knew that I wanted to try for a natural birth. After you have a C-section, they call it a VBAC. So that's what I wanted to try for. And that's what my OB and I planned for. That was our birth plan. So it was actually really nice. I was able to go on leave early, and I got to stay home for the last almost 2 months of my pregnancy. And this time my parents definitely didn't want to miss it, so they decided to come in 2 weeks before my due date and stay with us until I had my second baby, because they were going to help out with our dog Lucy and watch my daughter while we were at the hospital. So my mom has always had problems with her stomach and her intestines and her bladder, so she's on a very specific bland diet that helps alleviate her symptoms because there's no cure. So her condition is called interstitial cystitis, and she has to take pain medication to alleviate the symptoms because there is no cure. And on top of that, this is kind of like a preface. On top of that, she has really bad allergies and all of that. So it was end of December, early January at this time. So my due date was, I think, January 4th, yeah. And I didn't have my son until January 7th, so I was late. I guess he just didn't want to come out. he was really different from my daughter because he didn't want to come out and she came out early. So I think on my due date, my mom started to not feel good. And she could feel allergy symptoms come on, like her glands were getting swollen. And she just needed this type of shot. And we were driving, I drove her to probably 5 different urgent cares just to see if they could give her that shot. And I guess it's a specific shot and it needed to be ordered, and it's only at your general or preferred provider clinics and not at urgent cares. But because they lived in Michigan at that time and I lived in Houston, her preferred provider wasn't around, so all we could go to was an urgent care. And she was in a lot of pain. We couldn't figure out a solution for her, so I woke up really early, maybe like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on the 7th of January, 2018. Yeah. And I felt pain in my stomach. I was quite familiar with what contractions were. Started to feel them a little bit. So I use my contraction counting app to make sure that it's consistent enough to where we have to get ready to go to the hospital. At this point, I kind of know that he's probably coming. So I wake my parents up and tell them that I'm feeling contractions. And because my mom wasn't feeling well, I just knew that we were going to be in the hospital for at least 2 to 3 days, and they were going to be stuck at the apartment with the dog and with Lily. So I just didn't want her to be in pain the whole time we were in the hospital because I just didn't want to worry about her. So I just told them to pack their things, and my husband was going to take them to the airport before he was going to take me to the hospital. So at this time, my husband is driving my parents to the airport, and I'm just having contractions. They're not as bad. I mean, I could still talk, so I knew it wasn't that bad, but every time they would come, I would have to pause and take a minute to sit down. So it was just me and my daughter at the apartment and our dog Lucy, and I'm calling my daughter's dad. I think I maybe called him up 10 times until he finally answered. I mean, this is like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I tell him what's going on. I tell him I'm having contractions and that my current husband now had to take my parents to the airport, so he had to come and pick up my daughter. And he agreed, but he lived an hour away. So he left immediately and came and picked up my daughter an hour later. So I get her taken care of and I let her know everything's gonna be okay. I'll see you in a few days. I'm gonna go have a baby. Can't wait for you to meet your little brother. And she was so excited, but so tired. Poor girl, she's such a trooper. And then my husband finally makes it back from the airport from dropping my parents off. And we grab my hospital bag and get everything ready. Let the dog out because we didn't know when we were gonna come back. And left for the hospital. During this time, my husband's trying to call his parents to see if his mom would fly in to come and help with our dog Lucy while we're at the hospital. And they're not answering because they live in New Mexico and they're an hour behind us. So this is like 5 o'clock in the morning and he's trying to call them. It was just insane, and it was just a lot was going on. Of course, my parents felt terrible that, you know, I sent them off to the airport to go back to Michigan, but I just didn't want them to suffer while we were gone. But at the same time, they were heartbroken that they were gonna miss another one of my kids' birth. So we get to the hospital and my husband drops me off and goes to park. And of course, again, they're asking me all these questions. And I'm pretty much giving them the same answers. You know, my contractions are a minute apart. It started a couple hours ago. I don't know how far dilated I am. My water hasn't broke. So they get us situated and they call my OB. I felt terrible having to wake her up so early, but she was great. So at this point, I'm having major contractions. And they're becoming more and more frequent. So at this point, I can't talk. And they put us in a room to wait for my OB to get there. And it was just terrible. It's the worst feeling. They turn on the TV for us and I can't even watch it because I'm in so much pain. And I can't even get the epidural yet. It's just all around terrible. Let me show you this clam. Oops. So at this point, my contractions are super painful and I just want it to go away. Well, my OB gets there and I'm only like 5 centimeters dilated. And she pretty much estimates that I have a long way to go. So at this point, we're discussing our options because remember originally I said I wanted a VBAC, but at this point I was 3 days overdue and my husband is 6'4", so at this point my OB and I determined that my baby is going to be way too big for me to push out. Like especially if I couldn't do it with my first, who was probably going to be smaller than him. Since he was overdue, he's definitely going to be a lot bigger than what we expected. So unfortunately, I had to have another C-section. But the nurses were great. My OB was great. Everything went perfect. And he was over a pound bigger than my daughter. So my OB was right. As soon as she pulled him out, she said, "I'm so glad we didn't try to have a VBAC because we would have ended up having to have a C-section anyway because of how big he was." So I'm glad we just saved all that time and heartache and disappointment. I think when you make a birth plan, you gotta keep an open mind as to, you know, just letting down your expectations, because it just can change at the drop of a dime. So I think going into it, knowing what to expect already, I was okay with it. I think the first time I didn't know what to expect, like no matter how many videos or books you read, it's just altogether really scary. So it was great. My mother-in-law flew in. My husband went and got her from the airport. Only left me for a couple hours to check on our dog and get his mom. And then came right back and stayed with me. And my husband slept on the couch all 3 nights and never left me. I mean, he's the best, and I couldn't have asked for a better partner. Sucks that I had to get it wrong the first time, but I'm so thankful that I got it right the second time. And it was such a different feeling from my first one, just because I did feel the support. Like, even though my parents weren't there and my siblings weren't there, my husband was there the whole time with me through every step, stayed with me. Even when he was uncomfortable and didn't want to sleep on the couch or couldn't sleep on the couch, he still was there. And I will forever remember that. And I think it's important, especially during a time right now, to remember and know who was there for you and who's your biggest supporter. And it's not even about anything superficial, it's all emotional, and it's just, it creates a bond that's unbreakable. It does. So I'm really grateful for that, and really grateful to him that I could lean on him. And I do have to say that I typically don't like hospital food. I mean, who does? But we stayed at Memorial Hermann Children's Hospital in the maternity ward, and their cilantro chicken is the bomb. It's so good. That was my favorite thing to order there. But yeah, everything was great. I mean, I loved my OB. She was the best, and I wish I could still have her. But unfortunately, she lives in Houston. I forgot to show these clams. They're so good. Seafood is so good, especially when you haven't had it in a while. full on seafood. It's just a different kind of full. It doesn't weigh heavy on your stomach. So a little trick to getting like the bit out of it is you just use the other shell, scrape it, and voila! You can do that same thing with mussels, is use the other shell to scrape it. And actually that's my favorite part. So I make sure I always get it. Okay, I think that's it for me. I'm done. I hope you guys enjoyed my story time about the birth of my second baby. I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. Definitely hit that like button if you enjoyed this video and hit that subscribe button for the next video. Until next time, see you later. Mwah!